Anyway, there's lots to talk about. The ICC, the so-called International Criminal Court. Bunch of grifters over there in some capital city in Europe, paid for by us, of course, swanning around their fancy restaurants and doing all the rest of it, coming up with things to keep themselves employed, like all these globalist organizations. We should be pulling out a lot of them, by the way, the UN, the World Health Organization. Let's get Australia out of all of them. Trump's going to start pulling America out. We should follow suit. But they have come out with a great idea. Hey, let's arrest Benjamin Netanyahu, the Prime Minister of the only democracy in the Middle East, a guy who's trying to keep his nation alive, a guy who's trying to catch the villains and free the hostages after the horrific October 7th atrocities. So what do these clowns, the ICC, do? Oh, let's arrest them. Talking to us is someone who knows the law inside out, particularly international law. Natasha Hausdorff, great to have you back on Outsiders. This is an absolute disgrace, what has happened. Tell us the legal ramifications and your thoughts on the fact that they are saying the International Criminal Court have put out an arrest warrant for the Prime Minister of Israel.
Well, always wonderful to be with you. Just unfortunate that it's in these circumstances. Yes, this is a decision by the pretrial chamber to issue arrest warrants, not just against Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and former Defense Minister Yoav Gallant, but also against a dead man, Mohammed Daif. Hamas confirmed his death some 3 weeks ago. So the overriding impression, certainly from that inclusion of a dead Hamas terrorist, is that the court is seeking to approach this matter looking as if it's going after both sides in some even-handed fashion. Of course, that in and of itself is drawing an abhorrent moral equivalence between the only democracy in the Middle East and an internationally prescribed terrorist organization. But quite apart from those optics, the lack of jurisdiction that the court has to issue this arrest warrant, the flagrant violation of its own rules in not allowing Israel the opportunity to investigate and prosecute any credible allegations, and proceeding in these circumstances in a plainly political fashion, throws an awful lot of the law out of the window. And it's a further step, unfortunately, in the weaponization of international legal institutions against Israel. It's interesting that you remark on the personnel at the court. Anecdotally, I can say it seems that the vast majority of the work of the International Criminal Court appears to be done by unpaid interns. Nonetheless, this is at the cost of hundreds of millions of dollars. That is funded by member states of the ICC, including Australia. And it is incumbent, I would suggest, on every single state that actually upholds the rule of law, that prizes international law, to hold the court to account on this victimization of the Jewish state, because, and it's the last important aspect that I'll highlight here, these arrest warrant applications were predicated on entirely false information. The prosecutor of the ICC put out a public summary of his application, which he made on the 20th of May, and every phrase of every sentence of that public summary was false. It's been shown to be false by the organisation I'm very, very proud to be involved with, UK Lawyers for Israel, that went through those allegations chapter and verse, including the suggestion that Israel closed crossings into Gaza, prevented aid from going in. Nothing nothing of that sort, in fact, happened. On the contrary, the facilitation of aid into the Gaza Strip by Israel, by COGAT in particular, which is the unit of the IDF that's responsible for this, has far exceeded the requirements of the population of the Gaza Strip. Whether that's got to the people that need it inside the Strip, unfortunately, that has been hampered by Hamas. But in terms of facilitating aid into the Strip, Israel has gone above and beyond to ensure that that has occurred. And all the international aid, bar 1%, which was kept back for security reasons, has in fact been provided into Gaza.
What is the practical effect of this order? What countries can Benjamin Netanyahu not visit now because he could be arrested?
Well, this is a very good question. Certainly, there are certain states who have immediately said they will not be enforcing these warrants, Argentina, Hungary, and the Czech Republic. But even those states that haven't publicly come out to say that they would enforce have quite a difficult balancing exercise now to conduct, because the validity of these warrants is going to be critical to the consideration that these states have to take. On the one hand, they may consider themselves to be bound as members of the court to acquiesce to any request that they enforce these warrants. But on the other hand, they are also bound by immunity in international law, which heads of state like Netanyahu enjoy. And if these are, in fact, as I strongly argue them to be, unlawful warrants made on the basis of no jurisdiction without validity, then seeking to enforce them would in and of itself be a breach of the international customary laws on the immunity of heads of state. So it's putting a lot of these individual members of the ICC in a very, very difficult position.
James.
Well, given all of that and given what you've talked about and spoken about so eloquently about just what a threat to jurisprudence and legal principles this ICC is, we know in the past it's been used by dictators to prosecute enemies and things of that nature. Should nations like Australia simply pull out of the ICC?
Well, that's one option. Another is to make it very clear to the court, up with this we will not put, and to indicate very strongly that all of the questions about jurisdiction, which were raised with the court, both in 2020, when the pre-trial chamber was first considering the opening of an investigation in this context, and also again now in the context of this application for warrants. Many states, international legal experts, international organizations made representations challenging the court. And that is the key here. If the court cannot be reformed, if it cannot be stopped from this political agenda, then leaving it is always an option. But seeking to raise this issue on the agenda when it threatens international law more broadly, and when it also essentially puts at risk all other law-abiding Western liberal democratic
So Natasha, just very quickly, I've only got a minute left, but I just want to ask you, Penny Wong, our foreign minister, you know who she is, and Ed Husic, one of our other Labor ministers, they've come out and said, oh, no, the ICC must be allowed to carry on. It's independent. We respect its independence, blah, blah, blah. This comes along with a raft of other things that Penny Wong in particular has done. They've recently banned Ayelet Shaked from coming into Australia. She's a former Justice Minister from Israel. What does this tell you, just very briefly, about the Australian Labor government, Penny Wong in particular?
Ayelet Shaked was on her way to a strategic dialogue that she'd been invited to attend, one that is well respected and well attended. It's pretty shameful, but perhaps not something that's surprising in the context of the string of anti-Israel initiatives that this government has taken. The recent change in the last week in UN votes, a historic shift in Australia's voting record. Critically, though, this is putting Australia at odds with US foreign policy. I mean, even the Biden administration called out the arrest warrants as outrageous, but certainly the next US administration is going to be even further at odds with the policy that this government has been endorsing towards Israel at the United Nations, at other international organizations. And that cannot be a good thing for Australia going forward.
Natasha Hausdorff, always great to chat to you and get your clear-eyed vision on what is actually going on in the world. Thanks so much, and we'll chat to you again soon. That's Natasha Hausdorff there from UK Lawyers for Israel.